I'm still learning on this topic, as I'm sure you all are if you know enough about social media. On a scale of 1 to 10, 7 is the importance of social media in the crisis scenario now, and those are recent figures from Garner Communications. 72% believe this importance will grow. However, 79% do not have a defined process of dealing with SM in a crisis. Okay? So interesting to note, people are aware, but they're not actually doing very much about it. It's happened. It shouldn't have happened. This is what we're doing about it, and this is what you can expect long term. And I think if you adopt that strategy, it's a lot more powerful, obviously, than what we learnt with the BP. At least 75% of dialogue about you is not by you, so you are not in control. So it's making a crisis, a normal traditional crisis management exercise, a lot more difficult from 2 points. One is the speed of reaction that you've got to take, and the other one is the depth and feeling of any backlash, and even in some cases some positivity about things. Okay, so your decision is not to be in social media, it's how much you want to be able to hear, engage and influence. Okay, if you don't have great customer service, you're really going to struggle, because what social media will do is amplify and exacerbate. Okay, too much spend on marketing, I think, has been on gaining new customers and new clients. I think that's the way most marketing people are looking all the time when they assess their budgets. What social media has done in the last few years is made us redress that balance, because we have to spend more money and time now on brand reputation and on retaining existing customers. Okay, so that's really what social media has done. And it's also put the emphasis more on staff relations and the tie-up between staff departments and employee departments and marketing. Social media really is that bridge between the two. Okay, this is the great thing about social media. It's coming back to tell you of problems that are in your system. And you should regard that as a real gift, that people are taking the time and effort and bothered to tell you about your service levels. Okay, but the key things they could and should have done is, first of all, to have jumped on that a lot faster than they did, and the second thing is there are amusing ways of coping with that to keep the backlash, to the minimum. They could have offered to sponsor some of his We events. Had fantastic coverage of the Olympics with the BBC in the UK, but I was in communication with some friends in America, and they really didn't get the same standards of coverage that we got. And one of those that went absolutely global was the coverage from NBC. They were putting ads all over different people's key performances. The things here were that it was over a weekend, and everybody was out on the Twitter desk, and they just weren't responding, and it went absolutely bananas when the Chief Digital Officer said, "I've nothing to do with the Olympics." And you cannot claim at that stage, when you're in charge of the whole sort of digital operation, to say, "Well, it's nothing to do with me." It is. You can't get away with it. 2 days later, over the weekend, still nothing. But then you start to get the reaction, too little, too late, really. Brand lessons. Your customers determine what's important, not you, okay? Someone needs to actively listen to the community all the time, and there can be incidences and key things that escalate the problems through. There is software out there to help you to do that, okay? And most customer service issues begin with a simple question. Just don't let it get to that stage, okay? And it needs to be a personal response to get back down to those sort of issues and to apologise if that is appropriate. Okay, and all hands are on deck during a crisis. If you have something like that, then everybody needs to go in and sort it out. Femfresh, a brand designed for women to use down there, as it moved that from its website to its Facebook, and unfortunately the language seemed a little bit it was lost in translation, basically, and some people took umbrage to this and thought that it was too informal and was very childish, lots of euphemisms for this. So they started on social media to talk about this, and the whole thing started to gather momentum. It turned into a torrent as hundreds posted these comments. Okay. And what they did then, quite interesting, they tried but didn't quite get it right. They said, "We're listening and considering a response." Great. But they did that for about a week. Not good enough. So basically, and then what they did was they pulled the site. Okay, so that is a defeat. Okay, success. Kraft own Oreo, you know, the little black sort of chocolatey biscuits with the white stuff in the middle. And what they did there was they aligned themselves with the Gay Pride and, you know, the sort of main political issues about this. But they were much more, they took the whole humour of everything, because they had some criticism about you shouldn't mix sort of politics and these sort of issues with, you know, chocolates. So the same sort of, you know, shouldn't be too light-hearted about things, or, you know, sort of mix chocolates with these sorts of things. But what they did was they stood their ground. They responded exceptionally well on a one-to-one basis with everybody that communicated with them about this. All hands to the pump, and they generally, in the end, their statements came out to say, listen, we respect all genders and all issues. Diversity is the key to us, and from that point of view they won, because they were able to get their key messages over and a lot more powerful, and they got a lot more coverage and a lot more respect sort of for doing that. Okay, what they did, which really helps, and I don't necessarily advise that, but they sent a video out with the chief pilot describing reasons for not flying. Okay, what I generally advise is to have whatever you know, where you're getting the main inquiries through, always respond back on that, so at least have the link to wherever it is that you've got the action to the problem. In other words, nip the problem at source, fight the, you know, put your water hoses at the base of where the fire is. But they did that. They sent the video out and obviously gave the links, and that had 13,000 views in the first week and lots of very positive feedback, because people then actually understood why the disruptions were happening. Okay, at the end, Twitter followers were up to 68%. The number of tweets was up 360% over normal time periods. They had 2,000 conversations with people. Facebook was up by 12%. The main reason for a customer to use a rail operator's social media channels is to find information. Twitter in particular is popular for finding news or answers to quick inquiries, whether it's about tickets or timetables or the variety of cake available on board, or to complain or to praise our service. In addition to the central @Virgin Trains Twitter feed based at HQ and resourced by the customer relations team, we also have many individual Twitter feeds for stations where there are dedicated staff people pushing out detailed local information to those customers who follow them. We currently have 27,000 Twitter followers on the Virgin Trains main Twitter feed, and 64,000 people have liked our Facebook page so far. In an average week, we reply to 1,200 Twitter and Facebook comments. As Passenger Focus pointed out in their recent study, Passenger Focus are responsible for the quality of all the TOCs, the train operating companies. Some customers were found to have liked us on Facebook based on a feeling that Virgin had a more cool status than other train companies that made it feel more acceptable to like their brand. Many of our followers therefore engage with us because they're fans of the wider Virgin brand, and others because they're regular rail users, and in many cases both are true. The majority of comments we receive are either positive or inquiry related. According to sentiment monitoring data, because of course they're so big, that's what the sort of devices they employ, from the 1st of September to 1st of October, that's a month, 35% of comments posted on Twitter and Facebook were neutral, 30% were positive, and 16 were deemed to be complaints. Through Facebook, we run competitions, promotions, gather options, opinions, and share information. Twitter is much more fast-paced and requires more resource and rapid responses. During disruption on our network, our Twitter team are based in our control centre with instant access to information and resources to ensure that live updates can be provided continually. Our social media channels are manned 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Data obtained about our social media feeds is passed back to our business to ensure our teams know what customers are saying, and it has proved a very effective tool for gauging customer responses to changes in our service, such as news on-board menus or ticket promotions. Okay. In recent weeks, it has become particularly clear, thanks to the overwhelming support seen via our social media channels, just how passionately people care about Virgin Trains. The government's franchise decision and subsequent e-petition saw numbers of positive comments rocketing to unprecedented levels. In August, we received more than 50,000 comments in total on Twitter and Facebook, compared to 15,000 comments in the previous month. Okay? More than ever, social media is at the centre of what we do as a business. Okay? So powerful stuff as to how it can sort of affect things. Okay? We've now got Richard Branson sort of hands-on. I noticed one of the videos that he gave was probably from Necker. So he's sort of putting his holidays on hold to handle this whole problem, because he's passionate about the fact that they've gone 3 times for various different bids and not got it. So you should have that same degree of passion from an NBC executive. Okay? I always say planning prevents piss poor performance, and I would still say that that same thing applies. You've got in the crisis management packs some mechanisms that we've got to help you through that sort of process. And acknowledge the sort of statements, I feel your pain, it gives you time. That's traditional crisis management techniques. So as you see, those sort of still come through. The customers want to know that during a crisis I'm being heard, my opinion matters, and someone hears me and will do something. Use links to one frequently answered question place if you can. So clear signposting. Put it all in one area, and then you've not got different people, as things are escalating, you've not got different people referring to different documents or areas where they're holding that in a personal little store. Arm employees, it's never been more important to keep everybody involved. These days with LinkedIn, you know, if I've got a beef with a specific company, they've answered the query and I want to take it further, LinkedIn gives you so many possibilities to contact so many people within an organisation, and you really have to take that into consideration. Social media crisis management is not about winning individual points, it's about damage control and about long-term objectives, okay? And sometimes you also have to recognise some people are so angry that you just can't do anything about it, in which case you need to bring them offline as soon as possible. Once you've gone through a social media crisis management exercise, look at what you did right, look at what you did wrong, and then make sure that you try and learn from that, streamline the process, and then move on to deal with it for the next time, okay? Because it will happen again. The issue you've got to consider here is, say the pond is 100 and you are communicating with a lot of people in the B2C area. If on the business-to-business arena you've only got, say, 10% of that, but then you communicate with 90% of your market, that 90% of your market is suddenly going to disappear. So I think it's even more important. I've seen some really well-tuned circles of contact, to use the better phrase for it, for companies who have almost got probably 80 to 90% touches with their client base, their influencers, their stakeholders or whatever. And I think then you have to be really much more careful about things. And I think people don't realise that the level of contact that those people have, it's the sort of 4 degrees, 5 degrees of freedom, you can reach anybody sort of thing. So my view is it's in some ways more important that you communicate better with those people. It be it a smaller audience, but it may well be a very higher proportion than it would be in the Twitter sphere for a general consumer thing. So just be very careful. There's a firm of architects that I know, and they were very seriously into Twitter probably 2 or 3 years ago, and they're seen now as one of the leading people. If there's something happening in that area, that's who you want to speak to. So it is important, I think. Comcast example is that Frank guy was upbeat, and he was very positive about things, and you have to have people on that desk, as you do in any customer support role, that are very optimistic and can always see the better side, because you're constantly dealing with complaints and things. And it's about, well, how can I move that forward? How can I make that better? How can I improve this? Is there an opportunity there? And that, you know, it's important about the tone and level of the message and the people that you've got making those comments, really.